Hello everyone, welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today we are joined by Tommy Christie. It's the first episode, and Tommy Christie is the sales G at Ship 30 for 30. He's been a photographer for a long time. He's the Twitter lumberjack, and a bunch of other things. Used to be a ladies' man, but has now turned to God. So, has been a dear friend of mine. Welcome to the show, Tommy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like honestly so honored to be the first guest here. I really am, man. I love the name as well, Truth Talks. I like the alliteration. I like what you're doing here, man, and I'm so grateful and excited to dive in.
Yeah, for those, since you brought up Truth Talks, I think I came up with the name, the idea that it's not just that we discuss truth, truth itself talks through us as well. And that is the idea behind, the name. So I would love to dive off, the deep end directly. Let's start about your plan, your one-way trip to Argentina that you have planned at the end of this month.
Yeah, man. I bought a one-way ticket to go to Argentina, which is 7,000 miles away from me. I've been wanting to do something like this for such a long time. Like I've wanted to embark on a bit of a hero's journey. I don't know, like I've felt the call for over 10 years and I've shut the voice off and I've put it in the closet and I continue to push it off. But this time I just said, fuck it. And I bought the ticket and I decided to do it. And I'm so excited and grateful to get out of my comfort zone and to go to a place I've never been before. It's, well, I've been there once before, but I'm going to live there, for at least 3 months. And it took a lot of courage to make the move. And I'm feeling all types of emotions right now. But yeah, that's very much happening here very shortly.
That's amazing to hear. And you brought up something interesting. You mentioned that you have felt the pull for over 10 years now. So what really changed now that you took the call finally versus all the 10 years that you've been hearing the call exactly? Was there an event? Was it a process or did things just align as they had to?
I think it's somewhat like things align, but I'm deeper into semen retention than I've ever been in my entire life right now. I'm like 3 months in right now. And I think part of it was just like this primal masculine, like I'm doing it type thing. And I finally have a job where I can do it anywhere in the world. And, I'm in a good enough financial position where like, I'm not really risking that much to go. So it's the stars aligned. And then I also just think that I've developed a bit of like certainty and fortitude in who I am. And I'm like, man, I just have to do this. Like my word of the year this year, I have a vision board. It's agency. And I'm looking to I think this is just such a high agency move.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful to hear. It does stack up. Since you brought up retention, retention, doesn't it have like a spiritual quality to it? I think much of the internet focuses too much on the physical benefits, the testosterone boost or the enhanced pheromones and all that. But the fact that you mentioned that it helped you take a decision that you had been putting off for a long, long time just by virtue of the fact of your longest retention streak. Do you have you experienced the spiritual component as well, apart from the masculine urge, let's say, to fuck it, let's do it?
Yeah, most definitely, man. I just thought of this really weird analogy and like, I don't know, like it's the first episode of Truth Talks. We're gonna get weird, man. You know how like a sperm cell, like it like tries to break into the egg, like it drills a hole into the egg. Like I picture like when you're a man and you're on semen retention, you're almost like you almost become like this little sperm cell that just tries to, you know what I mean? That just tries to grow at all costs. And I just feel like ever since I've been on semen retention, like all day, every day, like all I'm focused on is just how can I grow and how can I get away from anything that's going to prevent me from growing? So I think that's how I kind of see it. Like I'm almost like this little sperm cell that's like, yo, let me find growth. Let me find fulfillment wherever I can find it in whatever ways that I can.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't call that weird at all. I think that's a beautiful analogy. It's the very sperm cell, I think 1 in 400 trillion, if I'm not wrong. Someone's gonna quote me on the number, but it's probably 400 billion, but we get the
Yeah, like
idea.
300, 400 million. Yeah, because it's like,
Yeah,
because that's the population of the US is like 320 million. So it's like every time you bust a load, like that's like literally like, I guess that has the potential to populate the entire United States if you take each individual cell. It's
I
crazy.
think it's insane. It's one of the lines I'd used for one of my articles I'd written for a premier publication. That was the first line. the power to birth an entire metropolis. That's the power a single load, contains. But if only that was enough to keep us from not doing it.
Yeah.
And you brought up growth, which is very interesting. The kind where you mentioned that, it's like a sperm cell trying to penetrate. And I wanted to bring up a quote that I really like in Light on the Path. For anyone else looking at it, this is an incredible book worth reading. It's by the Theosophical Society. So it says, one line that has stuck with me is, it says, grow as the flower does, unconsciously but eager to open its soul to the eternal.
Mm.
I might have missed something in the paraphrasing, but it must be the eternal and the open world that pulls your growth and not desire for growth itself. Because in the one case, you grow by the forcible passion for, I think, self-seeking. And in the other case, you develop in the luxuriance of purity. I probably
Mm.
butchered the hell out of a few words there, but I think that's the essence of what it says. And I find that fascinating. So
Mm.
this raw drive for growth, the masculine drive, the sperm penetrating, and this whole agency fueled, self-will sort of growth versus the other kind, where you're just open and you're curious, you're more in a, let's say, playful mode. In your experience, has there been a difference between the two? Have you experienced both? Are they mutually exclusive? Maybe I'm digging a bit deeper, but I'm interested in knowing more about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, as I see it, I visualize the yin and yang symbol. I think for me, it's like life is this just ever flowing entity, where sometimes you're in like this more masculine mode, sometimes you're in this more feminine mode. And I feel like I have the sensitivity and capability to like experience both of them within like the same hour a lot of the time. Like I spent the last 5 to 10 years of my life like reading really into photography and like these really kind of like feminine modalities where it's just like flowy and fluid. And right now I just find myself in this season of life where all I want to do is like, it's weird. All I want to do is like read old books and get jacked and travel and like learn Spanish. And like, I don't really have as much time for art right now. It's really odd. Like, it's just like, it just naturally happens like with where I'm at. And like, and art is great. Like I think we're creating art right now. And I think I think life is art and everything we do is art, depending on how you look at it. So I kind of take that back a little bit, but I guess I'm moving away right now from making art and just the traditional sense of it.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing, and I agree with the swinging of the polarities. What gets animated, be the inner feminine or the inner masculine, is just I would say it can be that quick if you are open to life. I think life decides what is animated when, rather than we ourselves deciding. In some way, if we see ourselves as this combination of our inner masculine and the inner feminine, it begs the question, when who is deciding to let the inner masculine, be animated more, or the inner feminine? If we ourselves are the combination of the two, the other half can't decide that, right? So I find it fascinating that where the decision comes from. And since we brought this up, one more interesting thing that has come up is this whole, I think, polar emphasis right now. You see online, little kids, especially young men, they're taught to be more and more and more masculine. I personally see this as, especially people like Hamza, First Man, all these, Andrew Tate and everyone, right? The ones in the masculinity space. There's this exposing of this extreme masculinity. But I've grown to believe lately that everyone has an innate ceiling of masculinity and femininity. It's like two gas cylinders, right? And there's just a set capacity beyond which you cannot animate, or you cannot, it's not healthy to push it beyond that polarity. In that frame, what do you think? Have you encountered a ceiling for your own masculine expression where you felt if you're going beyond that, things were getting, let's say, maybe too dry, maybe too rather than enlivening, right, towards death, if you were to put it that way?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like sometimes I do feel like, I guess what I think is like with semen retention, like this is somewhat related. Just to loop it back to what we said earlier. I think when you're practicing semen retention as a man, it almost amplifies your own innate nature, which for me is like, I'm a man, I was like born in this body. And I feel like right now, as I'm deep into this semen retention thing, I'm just moving into like my own masculinity in like a very authentic way. I'm not trying to force it or anything like that. This is what I'm showing up as. And all I want to do is like help people and change lives and, be strong. I haven't hit there's been times in the past. I remember when I was like 26, where I was just forcing it way too much. I remember I started listening to Jordan Peterson, and I almost like succumbed to like the red pill for a little bit. I had a friend that was in the red pill, and I like took it for a little bit. Then I just realized I was just developing a ton of resentment towards women and myself. And yeah, I think when I was like 26, I did hit a wall. But right now, as I see it, I'm just like really trying to let my innate nature just flow out of me and just be who I am and not really overthink anything and just show up every day and just try to be really, really kind to everybody. Just show up with a ton of positivity and just work really hard. Just be fully present for everything I do.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. It's really beautiful because it brings me back to the same thing that even I've realized lately that, as you mentioned it as well, sometimes taking a break from the whole masculine upgrade, right? When you realize where you're hitting a wall, I've found that if you really tap into the feminine, your own inner feminine that you have rejected, what Jung called, the anima, the repressed feminine in every man's psyche, and for women that would be the animus. It's funny how your masculine potential opening seems to expand all the more.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing, right? As you said, when you're 26, you probably reached the ceiling of what your masculine expression should have been there. And then maybe you brought the feminine up to par. And then it just hit me right now as we are talking that probably this is just the game that's being played. You just try to integrate the feminine into who you are like, in a balanced manner. And then that probably opens space for more masculine expression. And then you pull the feminine back up, and I think that's all. Maybe our nature is ever expanding that way, and every man probably has a set ratio of qualities, is what I've been believing lately. That you are not supposed to be more masculine in a ratio than someone else, for example. Look at someone like Mike Tyson, right? Or, the legendary kickboxer, Badr Hari. These guys don't try to be masculine. Do you imagine them waking up and deciding that, okay, I'm a max out my masculine potential today? And it's very humbling even for me because I was in the red pill for a while. I was in that space, the pickup space, even in India here, right? Serial dating. And for my peer group, I was just blowing apart all assumptions of what you could, how far you could go in terms of game as well, without lying, while being genuine, while being quote unquote dharmic or some semblance of, dharmicness. And I realized I did hit a wall back then. I realized I'm more effortlessly, unconsciously more masculine than I was, let's say, a few years ago. I was trying to force the voice. I was trying to sound deeper, and it's fascinating. What do you think about this idea where you just let the masculine flow and you, without any shame, tap into the feminine and then let the masculine and the feminine just integrate itself into a whole, rather than forcing either polarity to.
I think the reason people feel forced to like force it more or less is because I think true masculinity and true femininity are repressed, largely speaking. I think they're like in their truest expression. I think true masculinity is really scary. Same with femininity. Like if you take it in its purest essence, it's like a purely masculine man is very, very dangerous for any type of like tyrannical power structure, because you can't tell them what to do. Like they don't want to like listen. They don't want to take orders. It's really difficult to control somebody that's truly masculine. And the same thing with somebody that's really in their true feminine. You can't tell them what to do. You can't control them because they're just fully receptive and open to reality. So I think that's why we force it so much, is because I know I can't speak to your culture in India because, we grew up in very different cultural milieus, but here in the United States, I didn't really have any like healthy men in my life. When my father died when I was like 12, and I didn't really have any men in my life that I really looked up to or like that were good role models for me. So I think, and when I was in my 20s, I learned that, and subconsciously I was just trying to be something that I really wasn't. I was trying to be some weird, I don't know, false construction of what I thought masculinity was supposed to be like. And the older I get, the more I'm like, man, I just have to be me. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Again, I can relate to some extent because I lost my father, when I was 5, as in he abandoned us and all that. But then, you know, I grew up similarly with a very strong feminine figure. I've been realizing lately that what I seem to be seeking in life itself is the divine feminine. So I've been trying to cultivate a relationship of love and connection with the divine feminine, who is known by many names. There are different flavors, I've realized, as you said. And divine feminine energy is scary, or even the true masculine. I used to think that masculine energy is scary and feminine energy is just, mellow and smooth, but it isn't at all. It's pure chaos. And masculinity is pure order, the kind, the hammer that forces shape into a piece of molten, iron that
Mm,
tempers it. That's masculinity. And you
mm,
see, feminine is the fire itself that, smolders and burns and melts and vaporizes metals at a certain temperature. So, growing up with a powerful feminine figure and in the absence of a masculine figure, I could see how, as I grew up, this is my theory right now. I could be completely wrong, but it seems the truest. I've explored psychology, Jungian archetypes, spirituality, Eastern, Western, just so much across the board. I realized this femininity, it's like a proton and a proton that repel each other. Just suppress the fuck out of my own inner femininity that I had to animate my masculine. And I'd been going around in life with this handicap, right, for the longest time. That whatever limits of my own masculine were there, that was just maxed out and the feminine was just suppressed. And it would just burst out now and then in bursts of anger, no fab relapses, and
mm.
it all checks out. It makes sense why. There has been no relationship with my own feminine, with my own anima. And yeah, I find that fascinating. The fact that the more comfortable I'm getting with singing, humming, listening to devotional music, someone's gonna come in, this is all gay, but at this point it's like, bro, it doesn't matter. The suffering is too much to, still worship the masculine. And I see the same effect pronounced in these masculine archetype figures, right? Andrew Tate, Hamza, ones who have had some fractured relationship with their fathers and who are sincerely trying their best in their own way. And this brings me to the difference of masculinity as rebellion versus expression. Much of the world today, I believe, is just about extreme masculinity expressed dangerously but in a rebellious manner, in an anti manner that at the cost of femininity. What do you think about Tate, about Hamza, about the figures in the space? It's almost as if there's some resentment energy. You feel what I mean? When their masculinity is expressed.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on Hamza just because I haven't listened to as much of his content, but I have very mixed feelings on somebody like Andrew Tate. Like I think there's some things I really respect about him. Like he's a very strong man who clearly takes great care of himself. He's a warrior. He can fight, and he's clearly a very smart guy too. Like I would wager his IQ is very high, but I don't really think he gets it completely. Like a guy like Andrew Tate, it's just his value system seems so materialistic and so focused on outward appearances and cars and like having all the Dan Bilzerian. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like he's got this Dan Bilzerian, like, look at this hot girl next to me, and I really don't like I think Tate teaches men some important things, like you should be strong, you should be a protector, you should be a fighter, and I think making money is great, but I don't think it should be like, I think that's his core value towards everything. It's just like make more money, make more money. I don't think he lives by any real like spiritual principles. He might purport that he's like a Muslim or like Christian or what. I don't even know what his his theology is at this point. But he doesn't seem to me to actually practice or like practice any type of deeper spiritual practice. Yeah, I think you need to follow people with Andrew Tate with a huge grain of salt. Be very, very careful.
No, you're right. I had a Tate worshipping era. I wouldn't call it worshipping. I still thought of myself as very nuanced, but you realize how sometimes you're a total idiot, but you don't realize it until much later.
Mm.
And I could see that energy, that suffering, the resentment. I resented him for a long time because I believed the influence of these guys, the red pill space, fucked my dating life up. I couldn't hold down relationships anymore. I couldn't really commit to a woman. I really struggled with it. I think I still struggle with that. And I realize even, the funny thing is online, the few examples of healthy integrated masculinity aren't loud. Did you notice that? They aren't loud at all. That they
Yeah.
just sat there like Dry Creek Wrangler is a good example. Masculine theory is a good example. These guys aren't loud. They're not all over the internet. They're not viral. They're soft spoken, but strong spoken. They're connected to God. They realize they're great, but not greater than God, and they realize life beats you down quite a bit, beats the fuck out of you sometimes, and you need to take a step back. And that's what I'm realizing, even that maybe forces like Andrew Tate are necessary. to awaken much of the world, which it's neither in masculinity nor in femininity. As you mentioned before, they're both very powerful and scary. I think we are just in some limbo state, devoid of consciousness of either, either types. Especially in the West, in the whole, the degeneracy that's been taking over everywhere, disconnection to God, this fractured individualism. What are your thoughts on the overall scene from a yin yang, masculine, feminine perspective? What do you think is going on, especially in the West right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of got some, I don't know, like I would consider myself to be a Christian. So I guess I would I would put it in terms of like spiritual warfare. That's how the Bible talks about it. I think at all times, like every moment of your life is like spiritual warfare. I think it happens on an individual level and a collective level as well. And I think a lot of the pernicious forces, I think, that are eroding our ideals of masculinity and femininity are almost like you could conceptualize them as like these demonic attacks, you know, from like the devil or Satan or however you want to conceptualize like pure evil. You know, I think that there's attacks on high from really powerful forces that have a lot of money, you know, and they propagate these really unhealthy cultural messages through music and through media and movies that, you know, push us apart from each other. I think that's what's happening on a global scale. And I think that's why I think technology as well, like mixed in with like this new technology that we have. I think it's all just this brutal cocktail that makes it so hard to be self-aware and to like have any idea of like what it means to be a man or a woman. And like, you know, here in the West, like you have a rise in like transgenderism. I'm not, you know, like I have compassion for every human on earth. Like I don't think those people are bad or anything, but I think it's telling that we have confusion right now over our very own genders. Like there's people who feel like they were born in the wrong bodies. And it's like, how can you even conceptualize that? It's almost like, yeah, like we're being spiritually attacked all the time. If you go onto your laptop and go on the internet and go to Instagram, go to social media, there's so many different pernicious forces that are lowering our consciousness. So I think right now we're just seeing a rapid, like I think a lot of people are moving towards God at unparalleled levels, but you also have people that are moving downwards, you know, at unparalleled levels to even that all out. It's just this crazy like spiritual dance or war, like however you want to think about it. I see that happening right now, and I think technology is like amplifying the vector speed. You know, it's amplifying the velocity.
That's really well worded. I couldn't have worded that better at all. Spiritual warfare and pernicious forces, so many. And the crazy thing is, the ones who seem to be awakening are the ones who are assaulted by these forces the most.
Mm.
It's very funny. The more aware I've grown, the more dharmic I've grown, the stronger I've grown, the more self-integrated I've been growing, the worse have my, let's say, falls to lust become. And of course, there are the addictive tendency side, but then I realized it's actual real forces at work. It's not an accident. That the more of the positive heights that you seem to touch, the more they seem to try to drag you down. I was on a good streak for a while, and yesterday I could see the darkness at play, right? Just so sudden. It's almost like a pointed spear of darkness that's being, you know, you're just impaled by it, full body force, and that's how it feels like. And the forces at play everywhere, it's crazy that people don't see it or many aren't aware of it. They just think, even the conspiracy theorists, right? They just think it's some organization doing it and all that. But then, as you said, that's not the case at all. There are some real negative forces at play very powerfully. It's like the whole power versus force paradigm that David Hawkins espouses. The ones holding power are so few, the ones holding and emanating power in the world. But the ones who are on the side of force, be it positive or negative, even the higher positive reaches of force, right? Courage is where power converts into force. And you look at people, Elon Musk, Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, you have so many forces warring against each other. Some are at the level of pride, some are at the level of courage, some have gone beyond and they keep falling back so that they have to, fight the anger side of things. And then you have the whole black pill community, just steeped in shame, guilt, self-hate. And things are only going to get worse as it seems to be. I think Meta announced not recently, quite a while ago, AI profiles, and that's scary. Once you have AI profiles and the AI keeps getting better and better, and once the lines between AI and real humans online starts blurring, I think we are heading into a space where it would be totally impossible to distinguish the true from the false. Recently, I realized that's the greatest risk of falling prey to your vices, right? I used to think there was a point where I thought, after Vipassana especially, that how does it matter anyways? I mean, it's all impermanent. So even if I relapse a few times to know for how does it matter, as long as I'm not hurting anyone else, these ideas. Then it hit me with force that the greatest danger is when I'm down in my vices, when I'm giving into my sensual pleasures or not being, connected to God and in a dopamine detox state. The danger is the ability to distinguish the true from the false starts to get blurry. And that's scary. How do you know anything when you don't know what is true or what is false anymore? And that goes back to the idea that we all have this inner capacity. Maharishika talks about this a lot, Maharishika Preeti, that there is something within us which gives us a pure binary non-uncertain answer. It's certain. It's a binary blip. It's an on or an off. I think it's the impulse of consciousness itself that says true, false, right, wrong, on, off at all times, right? Moment to moment. Have you had an experience of that where there is something within us which can detect truth in everything, detect what is true and what is not true at all
Mm.
times? And that ability is what I think is being attacked and trying to be demolished so that people no longer know the difference between the two.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I think, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that we all have kind of like, obviously we have intuition that's been trained, I think like biological evolution, and we all kind of have that instinct. But I think there's a lot of forces that seek to dull that, like those demonic forces I was talking about earlier. I don't think they want us to know the truth, because I think the truth is that all is love and all is God, and all is just perfect and it's all going to be okay. And like that's a very destructive notion. If you're running like a media agency or like somebody who wants to drive clicks, if you're trying to drive people apart and put them into a state of fear, truth is very, very destructive. Like truth erodes everything. Truth erodes tyranny. Truth erodes ugly things. Truth is the ultimate reality. Truth is beauty, and beauty is truth. So I think we all have that sense, but I think it's been doled out, in some people more than others.
Yeah, that's true. Truth is beauty, truth is love. And even the ones who overthink of us, it brings to mind one quote that I heard. The problem with the world is, I think the wise constantly doubt themselves and the idiots are certain of everything.
Yes.
Something along those lines, right? And
Bertrand Russell, I think. I might be wrong.
yeah. Probably, I don't recall the source, but then I was having a conversation with some guys who are involved in the whole reforestation thing. We are working on a reforestation project locally, permaculture, ecological design. And you know what's interesting? Like when I was talking to them, they all are of the opinion that they don't want to get married, they don't want to have children, and their reasons are actually dharmic because they don't like where the world is going, and they don't want to bring new life into it for it to suffer and for it to add to the whole population count. And it just hit me and I shared with them as well. This is what's happening. The ones who are turning more aware, especially environmentally aware, they are choosing not to procreate, not to have children, because humans are a destructive race. That would be a one-sided statement. We are also a very constructive race. But generally, the way that things are going in the world, and then the ones who are not so aware, maybe because of their own ignorance or because of how the world is controlling them, kept in ignorance. Those people are having more and more children. What is going to happen to the world? The world is getting skewed towards, generally speaking, ones who aren't so aware and are having children compared to the ones who are far more aware and fear having children, seeing it as a nuanced decision. Even among my friends, right, the most aware of them also are the most doubtful, are the most uncertain. They treat it as a nuanced, multi-factor decision that will take into account all these 100 factors. Then we'll decide if you want to have children or not. And I find that fascinating. It's a problem of sorts, right? Do you have children so that you bring in more aware individuals into the world? Or do you not? In the second case, how do you make sure the others aren't procreating left, right, center? It's fascinating because this provides an ethical question which logically cannot be answered really. It's challenging on both ways. And I think digging deeper, I would love for you to expand on that and the next one. Maybe ethics itself. Logically, I think you can justify both sides. It's crazy of any argument. I've tried this experiment a few times. What do you think of both of these things?
Yeah, no, I personally think like in my opinion, I think it's a moral good for us to have children, but I also understand people that like your friends and like yourself who question the validity of having them, bringing them into this chaotic, painful world. But I think if you believe the Bible, for instance, like I think it depends on the theology and I guess spiritual worldview that you subscribe to, like the side that you take. I think if you're a Christian, like if you believe the Bible, like we are made in the image of God, which essentially means we all have like a divine spark within us. So I think if you take that at face value, then you could make a really easy case that it's a moral good to have children because you're just like putting more divine sparks into the universe and putting like, I don't know about you, man, but I love being alive. It's awesome. Like it's 10 out of 10. Like I love being able to eat chocolate, sip coffee, go on walks, hug my mother. It's all such a beautiful experience to be here on this earth. And I think if we have the ability to expand that surface area of like sensation and, beauty, that's a great thing. But at the same time, like I'm an open-minded dude and like I'll always hear people out and I respect people that don't want to have kids. I think that's fine. But I think it's pretty great to be alive. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's I like the life emphasis. It's one of the things I've noticed in you since a long time, since we first met, right? You've always been a very life-affirming individual. I find that beautiful because especially in spirituality, right, you can go down certain pathholes where you can turn pretty anti-life in a knowledge, awareness sense also. I think Vipassana, while it doesn't particularly say that anywhere, for some, myself and a few others I've seen, the effect has been a general dispassion with life as a whole. That
Whoa.
you're just taught that life is dukkha, it's suffering. And, this is interesting. The fact that you said, whoa, because we'll get into that. I'm probably seeing there's an attitude that comes behind intentions, right? That can determine the whole direction of where you go. There can be someone who sat as a meditator who thinks nothing matters, so I shall be absolutely passive, not move, except when I feel the call to, like a passive mode. Versus another could take it completely active. That, okay, fuck, everything is impermanent, so it all has meaning. So how has Vipassana impacted that view of yours? Because for now, what I've seen, it's only made me more and more let's say, non-life affirming for a long time. And I'm not suffering. That's the crazy part because you learn how to watch suffering, right? You're not suffering really. But at the same time, you do realize that the bodily mind system is suffering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. And I guess, so I've kind of fallen off my Vipassana practice. Like I did a 10-day course last year and I haven't been good about keeping up with it. And there's so much that I resonate with about it. But I think for me, it misses a little bit. Like there's certain realities that I think Vipassana, like I think it's awesome. I'm not here to like, shit on the Buddha because I think the Buddha was one of the most amazing humans that's ever walked the earth, and he figured out some truths about the human experience and like reality in general. But he went deeper than almost anybody has ever gone. And I think he extracted some really useful things. And I think Vipassana is great because it really like tunes you into the sensations of your body and like the sensations of like what's going on around you. But for me, like what was missing for me with the teachings of Vipassana was like that there's like another spiritual reality that I think exists that we're not able to perceive with our senses. And I never heard that discussed within Vipassana. And like, I have no proof, like I have no evidence to show that this reality exists. I just know it exists. So I think that was the only thing that Vipassana missed out on for me. And does that make sense?
That makes far more sense than you will probably, just if you had this conversation maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, I would have, built a strong case for Vipassana, explain like how, at that core level, the kalapas and everything. But I
Yeah.
think Vipassana at its core has an attitude emphasis, which is interesting when you understand why exactly it's built the way it is. The whole attitude is we as individuals have control only over the present moment. So all of Vipassana tries to see what is the, it's like a present moment maxing system. How in the world do I function the best possible way in the present moment? That is by being aware of sensations and thoughts and everything. And also by being equanimous with them, which logically is undeniable that in the present moment, this is perfectly the way to deal with reality, moment by moment, moment by moment. But as you said, it misses that crucial part, which even I found, I've taken a step back from my Vipassana practice right now. When there are dark negative forces at play, right? Sometimes you lose hope in all things good in life itself. And in those moments, it's not very easy to function optimally in the present moment with awareness and sensations. And I've realized the more Vipassana I've done, the harder it became to hold on to a concept of God. the harder it became to hold on to a concept of a personal guardian angel. While the evidence in life has been reaffirming it again and again and again, I've had experiences where I've felt divine protection. I've had experiences where I've just felt that loving presence, as you call it. I think the Christian faith tradition has a beautiful word for it. They call it the Holy Spirit. I think the Father, the Holy Spirit, and I think the Son, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Problem here is with Vipassana, that starts getting deconstructed really, really fast. And that's scary for someone who loses hope in everything. It brings to mind Becker's book called Denial of Death. In
Yeah,
that,
I've
he
read that
says
one.
something. Yeah. It says that naked reality is utterly incomprehensibly scary for a living being. Naked reality in its true way, right? If you strip away everything, just think about it. Now I'm sat here in this chair and I'm with this electronic device, and there's a ceiling fan rotating on top. There's nothing stopping that ceiling fan from, to come crashing on my head and probably chopping my head off, or just for this laptop to just blast open, or like some blood vessel inside to blast, or you realize there is death, the possibility of death every second, every moment, again and again and again. And he says that God is a coping mechanism, alcohol is a coping mechanism, lust is a coping mechanism, beliefs about reality are coping mechanisms, society is a coping mechanism. And his idea is that everything the human being tries is to finally deal with reality, which is so incomprehensibly scary, chaotic, and ununderstandable. And Vipassana starts deconstructing that exact, the whole cluster mess of coping mechanisms. So for someone who doesn't have that strong self-integration core, right, the most advanced Vipassana meditators I know somehow seem to have also the strongest integrated self cores. And that's interesting. I find that interesting. I personally have a lot of struggles with inner polarity and inner swinging. For someone like me, I need the coping mechanism of God, even if it's at an experiential level, even logically, whatever you want to call it. It's humbling that sometimes you have to take a step away from absolute truth to even ensure your progress on the path. This was very, very, very humbling for me when I realized Vipassana is it's atomic truth. It's almost like you were to say quarks are what compose protons, electrons, and neutrons. That is the truth. But sometimes you cannot deal with reality at a quark level. You need to look at it at an atomic level, at a molecular level, at an elemental level. With Vipassana, when I took a step back, I think that's what happened. Would you resonate with that experience that sometimes we cannot tolerate truth? There are levels of truth where the being just cannot tolerate, and sometimes taking a step back from that is the way towards deeper truth later on.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, man. Like I've had a lot of different psychedelic experiences as well, in addition to like diving deep in that Vipassana retreat. And I think when you take psychedelics, like the Aldous Huxley calls it, like the doors of perception open up, and you can get into these altered states where you like, the way I see it, like when you're really tripping balls on something, like like you're seeing reality in a much different way. I think a way that's almost like more accurate. Because I think as human beings, like we have a particular set of senses. Like when I'm looking at you right now, I can only see a particular amount of like, rays of light based off of the way that my eyes are calibrated. And it's a very narrow kind of band of light that I'm actually able to perceive with my eyes. So if I was able to perceive all of the rays, like I wouldn't be able to do anything. We would just be sitting there in awe all day, just like looking at we wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to go to the store and get food and, like talk with our parents, like, cause we'd just be totally stunned at the naked reality of life. So yeah, I fully agree. Based mainly off of my psychedelic experiences. Have you ever experimented with those?
I have. Just in the interest of legalities, let's not get into the details of what I have. But yeah, as you said, among the friends, even on Twitter, on the Twitter side of things, the ones I've seen who have awakened a lot with psychedelics, right? There's a strong case to be built that psychedelics or intense Vipassana retreats or other intense methods can awaken you really, really quickly. But the danger is the integration lags. And I realize even the ones I know, the most awakened people I know, I consider myself to be very awake as well, just in the fact of what I know. Of course, my being still struggles with those truths. That's the integration phase. So I realize I think there's a pairwise fashion you need to go, that you awaken a bit, then you wait for the integration to catch up, then you awaken a bit more, you wait for the integration to catch up. And what happens with psychs is, especially for someone who's new to it, like an intense acid trip, I've tripped balls on it for some time, and It's just that it shoots you here. Then where in the world will the, integration catch up? I know I have friends who have done intense DMT trips and the doors of reality have blasted open. You access higher dimensional beings and you realize it's not just a figment of your imagination, right?
Yeah.
They're real.
Yeah, no, that's why I believe in this spiritual reality. And I think it's like the way that we could conceptualize it is like there's different dimensions that exist here with us right now that we simply don't have like the sensory apparatus to like to sense. All these like weird creatures that you could access within the realm of DMT, they're here in an abstract sense. We just can't see them because I mean, I've read things on Twitter. It's like sometimes people, you can get attacked in these spiritual realms by forces that you have no defense against, unless you're really, really godly or self-aware, and you can almost lose yourself completely and like spiritually die in these places. So I really think things like DMT need to be treated with, and like ayahuasca, they need to be treated extremely carefully. Ayahuasca specifically, like I've got mixed opinions. I've never actually done it, but if you think about it, like ayahuasca it's this it's a brew of a vine and a plant, like that are combined together in such a way that they release DMT in your brain, and not only release it, but they sustain it over a period of like 8 hours. It's wild, and like when the shamans in the Amazon are asked, like how could you have possibly have figured this out? Like how did you, like there's millions of plants in the Amazon and somehow they knew to put together this particular vine and this particular plant and this specific type of way. It's like, that's a miracle. If you really think about that, that makes almost no sense by modern scientific standards, how they could figure that out. When they're asked how they were able to figure that out, many of them are like, the forest spoke to us. The forest told us how to do this. And you have Westerners, like these rich Westerner people that will go, like I've thought about doing this, like going to Peru and like doing this plant medicine that's not even native to their own culture. Like I think we have to be very careful, very, very respectful of these spiritual realms, because we're really out of our element there as like these physical corporeal beings.
Yeah, you're right. I fully agree with that stance on it. Luckily, the few times I think I've done whatever experience I've had, I was ready for it. I can imagine someone who hasn't awakened to, let's say, even the deeper material realities. Many people believe that the government runs everything, and you do realize the ignorance that most are steeped in society as a whole, right? It takes a layer of just looking through the material matrix to start with before you even start thinking of unpacking, deeper spiritual realities. And these experiences can be, as you said, it's not for everyone at all. And just the knowledge that comes to some, that they're guided to that force, it reminds me of one particular indigenous people, a tribe that just know how to navigate, let's say, I think these are the Andaman tribes, I'm not wrong, or somewhere else. They just know how to navigate, I think, thousands of kilometers of the ocean via boats with no compasses, nothing, no apparatus of direction at all. And they just know how to navigate that tricky route and come back. If I'm wrong, these guys don't exist anymore. They just are able to do it by the taste of the water and just looking at the stars. There are some skills which are so mind-boggling that AI can never ever learn them.
Yeah.
So, it's something interesting that apparently the amount of skill that's involved in terms of motor skills and the mental creativity and the whole holistic integrated self involved in just foraging, in the simple act of foraging, or in the simple act of hunting without a gun and all that, right? Hunting in a primal sense. That's super hard for artificial intelligence to replicate, apparently, for bots to replicate. And knowledge work, coding, programming, which is hailed as the heights of what the human mind can achieve, they are apparently easy. And it's crazy. It shows something. The very things we frown upon. We have domestic help at home. Her jobs will probably never be replaced in her lifetime because the bots to build to, make it so effective are so complex. But then the whole knowledge work side of things is being automated easy. So it somehow makes you question the whole blue collar, white collar notions of work, which is worshipped outside as well, right? People are like, the mind is the greatest. I think consciousness is where it all goes back to. And certain people have a certain Dharmic command, I believe. There's this idea called Svadharma in the eastern side of things. The idea is that you, Tommy Christie, have a certain DNA makeup and a certain karmic makeup when you're brought into this life. And then there is a certain destiny which is very uniquely suited to just you, that you are meant to actualize. if you continuously live according to, in alignment with your own being. And I find that fascinating. It doesn't say everyone should become the Buddha. It doesn't say everyone should serve the world, should become Musk or someone. It says that everyone has a certain mandate. And this truth hit me, I think, a few months ago. If there's a sweeper, right, who's sweeping roads and that's his divine mandate, then he is actually far more in alignment with the universe than I am. If my potential is something else or direction is something else, and I'm stuck in making money or quote unquote the visible markers of success. So I think, and that shows in the happiness of people. It's unquestionable. There have been times where I've grown spiritually resentful of people that I know far more than you do. Why the fuck are you happy? It's almost like, I should be happier, but I wasn't. Then it blew my mind, the humility that some people can be an embodiment of the truth and they don't realize it themselves. When you are out of kilter with your own system, with your own direction, then you suffer. It's crazy. The universe does not reward knowledge at all.
I think knowledge is just like a tool, and I think it can be a gift and a curse. I think at certain points, like you get oversaturated with it and like you don't have enough action and you get bogged down and you get depressed. But man, I think something that's helped, like you referred earlier to God as like a coping mechanism, and it might very well be, but I think it's the greatest coping mechanism of all time. Like if you like believe that there's this benevolent, all-kind being that, has your back and has the back of everybody in the world and is constantly pulling us all towards them. Like, I think that's just such an empowering thing. And that for me, it's like, I've had spells in my life of atheism and depression and anxiety, but I really haven't had any of that in the last few years. And especially the last year. I just have such utter faith that it's all going to be okay in my life. And at all times, I'm exactly where I need to be and everybody's exactly where they need to be. I think that there's such power in believing that. Who are we to say otherwise at any point?
Exactly, right? That's the spiritual ego in question, that which is also very tricky. Even online, I've been seeing a lot of people hailed for their knowledge, that how much do they know. You can sound smart easily. Even now, like it's so easy to sound smart, so
Yeah.
easy to sound wise, and just pull off a whole, guru phase itself.
Yeah.
And as you said, but it's very humbling to know what your own mandate is, that what you need to be doing. It's so humbling to realize the orders come from somewhere else. As you said, there's a benevolent being which has programmed everyone with their own beautiful path to self-realization. And every being is on its path. Every cockroach, every dog, every cow, every whatever, right? Even the tyrants of the world. You realize technically, one point which brought me compassion was the ones who seem to be instruments of negative karma are technically saving the rest of us having to bear the same. That the world is in balance. There's the positive and the negative, apparently speaking. And someone like Hitler, for example, while the world says that he wreaked a lot of havoc on people, that's true. The suffering that his own soul must have gone through is so immense. With Vipassana, that becomes clear, right? The amount of suffering someone has to go through to dole that out to someone else. That's what I think Goenkaji says in one of the discourses, if you recall. He says, you realize you're growing in the path of Dhamma. Dhamma is just universal law for those not familiar with it. When you realize that you're not just compassionate towards the victim, but you're also compassionate towards the criminal because he is the victim of his own ignorance. I find that powerful, very powerful. And Metta does that to you, that you just cannot be angry at anyone in those moments, right? Even the perpetrator, even the victims, you're just compassionate towards everyone because they don't know, and they're all suffering. It's very powerful, that frame of mind.
Yeah. There's a quote from Jesus Christ. He says, forgive them for they know not what they do. And it's like, that's it, man. It's like, if somebody does something, yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. We just have to have, I think, open hearts towards every person, regardless of how cruel their acts. I think we probably actually need to increase our compassion for those people because the reason they're acting out of that is because they haven't received that love, and they're just looking for love in all the wrong ways. And, I think it's like we're all worthy of forgiveness. And I think that's what I think we owe every person on the earth, every being. We owe a ton of forgiveness and kindness to everybody. At least that's the social order I'd like to live in.
No, that's beautiful. I love that as well. When you said they are looking for love in the wrong ways, right? It reminded me of the whole lust side of things as well. There has been a phase where I beat myself up. Why do I have these tendencies? And the deeper my understanding of reality grew, the worse the lust grew as well. And then off late, I've been realizing that lust is exactly that. It's looking for a kind of love that does not exist in the world at all. And it's looking for it in a perverted manner. You know, it's almost like a kid who wants something. He wants a candy, right? He asks for it, he hopes for it, he waits for it. But then he doesn't receive that. Or he looks for it. He looks through multiple boxes. Then he just starts, pilfering. He just starts stealing. He just starts snatching it. I see lust as the same. That the reason I bring this up is not as the sexual kind, but the whole spiritual attitude of lust itself, which is just taking. I realized for many of us who have, I suspect you might relate a lot as well, who have this repressed feminine inside, who have not yet tapped into it, or who are an over-animated masculine in comparison. For them, I think there is such a deep craving for the feminine. Like I struggle to dance, I struggle to sing, I struggle to play, just general things which are quote unquote considered feminine. But it's not that I don't like them. I just can't do them, even if I want to. There's such strong resistance built in. I struggle to cry as well. And I realized that is the craving. The craving is for the own inner feminine. The craving is for love. And love is just everything that is. I think it's just the divine feminine. Lately, I was watching a video by Gabby Kovalenko. She's a very awakened individual on YouTube. She's young, but very old soul. You can just see it from the way she speaks. And when she spoke about the divine feminine across the world itself right now, being repressed and hurt and rejected, and I could see genuine pain in her. She was actually brought to the point of tears as she said it. That's not pretense. That's not delusion. It blew my mind. Then this is the case. It's a world, the whole patriarchy also, I realize it's not outside. It's the problem is inwards. Inwards, there's a masculine bias everywhere. The women want to be men. Even the feminism point, right? There's one teacher in India called Acharya Prashant. He says that only. Why do the women want to do what men have? Why do you want to compete with men? You have gifts within that can change the very fundamentals of society. And I think a few people on Twitter are awakening to the same truth. The divine feminine trying to influence the world in a divine feminine manner, not in a masculine manner, which has already been done. Thousands of years of wars, conquests, and killing each other, and raping the women, killing children, impaling people, tales of conquest. And historically speaking, do you notice how utterly devoid of feminine emergence we have had? Because women have always tried to step up and compete with the men. And I think that is happening now slowly. Women are stepping into their own power. And maybe, do you feel that shift? That there's a divine feminine, divine masculine balance that's emerging slowly. Men are learning to be intuitive and so on.
Yeah.
Probably didn't convey that as well as I could, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got like it's like a very complex topic, and it's pretty abstract in a way too, but I've got mixed feelings. Like I think, like I was saying earlier, I believe that there's a war against pure masculinity and pure femininity. And I think women are like becoming more like men, and then like men are becoming more like women. Like there's a lot of like spineless, weak men without muscle or drive or anything. And it kills the polarity, and it kills like you look at the United States, it's like, I'm 34 and I don't have a woman or like a kid or anything. And like, I think in any other generation, I'd probably have that. And we're just living in a culture that's profoundly different than any culture that we've ever lived in. I think polarity is leaving and it's gone. And I think in some ways, it's like when people talk about the patriarchy, in some ways, I just think it's bullshit. I don't think it makes any sense to me. Like, I think that like we have roles as creatures, like there's feminine creatures, there's masculine creatures, and neither one of us are better than the others. Like I don't think men are better than women or women are better than men. We're just humans. And like we're genetically imbued with certain gifts and attributes that, I think for a while, I think they were expressed in very healthy ways. Like, I think I don't think we should go back to an older time where women, like, I think it's great that women can enter the workforce and do whatever the hell they want to do. I think that's a really beautiful thing, but I think in some ways it's led to a ton of chaos, and it's led to us like really having these identity crises as beings, because everything's different than it used to be. Like there's been no time in human history where, like, I guess women and men have been competing with each other in the workforce. I think before it was like, we were more collaborative. Like we needed women to propagate our species and to take care of our children and to survive and to provide us love and affection and, to take care of our little ones, which is like, one of the most important jobs you could ever imagine. Like, it's probably the most. And men
Yeah.
would go out and like hunt and go out and do these risky
So
kind of things that required speed and strength and our other kind of like divine physical attributes that we have. So I think now we're just living in a period where we seem to be misaligned with the truth, like the basic truth of like our own sex. It's really bizarre to me.
yeah, I do understand where you're coming from. And I think right now what's happening is the shadow versions of masculinity and femininity are both active and the true versions are both dead, as you said. I would agree with that fully. That what is being celebrated is the shadow version of the masculine. There's a
Yeah.
true masculine which is strong. It's like water, right? Water is strong. Bruce Lee said, "Be like water, my friend." True
Hmm.
masculinity is not just strong, but it's adaptable, but it's still robust. It doesn't like crumble. It's not brittle. It's not brittle like glass, which is hard, but it breaks if you just hit it hard enough.
It's anti-fragile.
Yeah, it's anti-fragile essentially. That would be the essence of masculinity, that the femininity chaos is trying to bend the masculine, and the masculine stays calm, stays in surrender, stays rooted, firm. Like
Calm.
the character in Avatar, or what's that character? I forgot his name. That calm old man image, right? Who's strong, but who doesn't feel the need to show or express his bravado. And right now, the whole shadow side of it is active, power, exuberance, trying to show what you are, braggadociousness, and all these
Flexing.
qualities. Yeah, the flexing essentially coming from a point of insecurity and hating the feminine, rejecting the feminine, suppressing the feminine. And women are doing the opposite. Like, if you notice what's happening, the beauty of the feminine is that, the chaos, but the beauty of emotional intuition, being able to tap into deeper frequencies. Now, what's happening is the chaos is being weaponized and the degeneracy side of things are being activated. And then you realize it's never been a masculine feminine war at all. It's been a war of negative forces versus just consciousness itself. And consciousness itself can be looked at in a dualistic way as the divine feminine and the divine masculine. That's one way of looking at the whole of consciousness. And you would be right. I can imagine, especially in the West, the demoralization you would be seeing. I see this in my city. I live in one of the most developed cities of India. The lag isn't a lot. Whatever comes up in the West is adopted within a year or two here. And I can see what's happening, and it is scary. The utter unrelatability of what's happening, right? It's like, what in the world is happening? It's a space of confusion everywhere. And in this world, I realize it's so damn important to be in touch with your own self. There's nothing else that can be done. The whole activism, you can't do that when you are lost. I've realized. What can you provide when your own cup is empty, when you don't know what your cup even is? So, from that end, what have you been doing in terms of, let's say, sadhana in a day, the practice, the things you do on a daily that keep you in touch with your own consciousness, that keep you conscious, that keep yourself whole when there are forces that are trying to rip it apart right now?
I'd say a few things. Like, I think every morning when I wake up in bed, I always like, this one's really important for me. I just like thank God. I'm just like, man, like, thank you for another day of like this beautiful, trippy experience of like being a human being. That really helps me. Like every morning I do that. I also like, I go on walks and I find like, I find that like on my walks, like I'll put my phone away and I'll just like be really present, like really tuned into my surroundings and like just feel the air moving through, through my lungs. And I'll just thank God. Like I pray when I walk, that's where I usually that's like my main spiritual practice these days. It's just like I'll go on these walks and I'll just like consciously tune into God when I'm on my walks. I'll just be like, thank you. Like, thank you for this. This is incredible. Thank you for everything. So it's kind of like I've been like I haven't been meditating in the traditional like sit down sense very much recently, but that's kind of how I do it. I'll just go on my walks and I'll just like be hyper locked in. And then I also like weightlifting helps me a lot. It like really roots me in my body, like just to feel the blood pumping in my veins. And like, yeah, I love the sauna as well. I think the sauna is a really nice physical, spiritual, mental practice. I do cold showers. Like that's really cool. But yeah, I think you can make everything in your life a meditation. For me, like I do sales and like I'm on these calls with people 6 hours a day. Even now, I feel like I'm kind of meditating in this conversation with you. I'm not like focused on anything else. I'm just like paying attention to what's going on. So I try to make everything almost like a practice, like a spiritual practice.
No, that's beautiful. The point you bring up has so much and talks or whatever it is. And I realized that, just mundane practices that people say are materialistic. I realize that's not the case at all. Like working out is, if you do it in the right way, you're aware and you're not just trying to do it to flex in front of the gym girls, right? And then when you do that, I think you tap into something deep. You're probably tapping into and respecting the inner masculine. It just hit me. This insight hit me as we were talking. And when you're, let's say, singing or humming or just chilling to some good music, you're tapping into the inner, you're feeling the music, you're trying to get a feel of that. And this is the whole beautiful play of things. Everything we do, there's a continuous tapping into something. As long as we're aware in that moment, that's all really, that it is in the moment everywhere, and there's consciousness. That's all. We're either conscious or we're not. And that's beautiful. As you said, it is a moment by moment thing. I've not been doing a lot of sit down meditation myself lately, but this is what it really is, that every moment you're in the moment. And that's all really meditation is finally. You're in the here and now. Funnily, whatever is true is only the here and now, finally. Like memory is a mental stack of things, which is the past. The future is a fictitious construction based on a present reality understanding. But technically, the only moment is now, and even though in that within the time you say the word now, the now has already passed. It's crazy. So, in some ways, I think spirituality is more reality than reality itself. That we are in the only form of reality which truly exists, which is the current moment, which is the now. And I find that beautiful. The fact that you brought up sales are generally seen as anti-spiritual, that they're manipulative. Since you brought it up, I would love to know how has your experience been being a dharmic person versus how navigating the traditional sales landscape, which even in my perception is full of like false promises, exaggerations, manipulatory tactics, generally, not all of them. So how has your experience been?
I love sales because I think sales, it's like the most it's the most pure form of business. It's like the most pure form of like value transference from like one human to another human. So I think it's just this raw, it's like raw, beautiful business in all of its beauty and of all of its ugliness. It's I think I think sales gets a bad rap for a good reason, because I think, generally people have been fucked over by a bad person at some point in their life. All of us have. Like we've all at some point pulled out our wallet and like somebody's taken advantage of us, and like we're a little bit fearful because we've all been burnt before. But I think if you're working with good people and if you feel like the offer that you have is generally helping people, it's almost like a moral good to sell. That I really believe that it is a moral good to sell if what you're selling is helping another human, like live a better life and, get to their goals faster. So I think it just depends on the offer and the person that you're working with. But if it's a good offer that's been constructed with a ton of intention and a ton of wisdom and knowledge, then I think selling is a very, very good and necessary thing, to keep us moving to help keep us moving forward as a species. Because, I look at this country I live in, the USA, and like it's a beautiful, flawed, wonderful, fucked up place, like it's all of those things at the same time. Like if you say something about the US, it's true. But I think in some ways it's like it's the most powerful and like successful country ever in a lot of like tangible, like material ways. Probably not in spiritual ways. Like I'm not going to make that claim. But the reason why like this is a country that's so prosperous, generally speaking, and like the quality of life for most people is so high is because like, there's been such commercial success here. And, like obviously like that's come at the cost of the environment and, and like it comes at costs, like the material wealth that we build up, but it's primarily because people conduct commerce with one another and they sell things and they exchange things and they have a really like go-getter mentality. So I think sales is like a beautiful, ugly, necessary thing. And it's almost like this raw expression of life itself.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That has a lot, that perspective has a lot of weight to it. So, how's your experience with Ship 30 for 30 been? I'm already coming from a biased perspective because my perception from the get-go has been that having been a successful digital writer for quite some time, millions of views and then close to 50K followers on Medium and all that, I sort of understand the game, and I feel that some of these cohort style programs, they just sell you too much. I mean, sell you too little for too much. That the value add isn't really worth even 1/10 of the price that they charge for it. This has been my perception. I've not gone through an actual cohort. I don't have the beginner experience. I can't unknow what I know and go back to being into a beginner frame of mind and seeing what the value add is. But I would love to know how your experience has been at Ship 30, 430 so far.
It's been great overall. Like, obviously nothing's perfect. And like, there's some things that, I would probably change, but overall, like, I think it's great. I think they've given me like the tools that I need to succeed at this job. I have a sales manager now who's absolutely incredible at teaching sales. For my money, he's probably one of the best sales managers in the world. So I'm getting world-class training, and I think they offer great products that help people, because not everybody has like the discipline and obsession that you have, Mitra. Like when you came to writing, it seems like this is part of your dharma, like part of the reason you were put on earth is to write. I think some people, they don't necessarily like have the structures or the frameworks to succeed in writing. So I think it can help to offer frameworks that limit friction, for people to like get into writing. And I think they offer a ton of useful frameworks for people as well, to like understand the social media game. So I think they help people a lot. They make it a lot more efficient, like to learn how to write on the internet. Because I'm sure that you ate a lot of shit at first when you first started writing. If you had a guide or a coach at the beginning, like it could have helped you out. It could have, maybe saved you a little bit of time. So I think that their products are incredible. I think that they offer really incredible digital products that like help people how to write, and they give them, like frameworks on how to monetize their writing as well. So I think it's probably not the best fit for everybody, but I think if you want to write or if you want to monetize your writing, they make some of the best products in the world. Because I think Nicholas Cole especially, I think Dickey's awesome too, but Nicholas Cole is one of the most successful digital writers of all time, and he knows the game pretty much better than anybody. And I think I've met him, and he's just a really good dude. He genuinely wants, and the same with Dickey. I think they want to help people and impact people. And that's how you make money, man. Like, you don't make money if you're not impacting people or serving them.
No, I would agree. I would agree with your analysis of Nicholas Cole. I would agree that he understands the digital writing game better than I think anyone else on the planet. I've read his books, The Art and Business of Online Writing, and he had a different business going on. I think it was called Category Pirates. I think that was some of the most original thought, think tank ideas I've seen ever. Like some of the best original packaging of ideas and everything, which I think he's taken a step back from. But I would agree that he does take his work and, the craft quite seriously. But yeah, we are all blinded by our own experiences and our own. That's why I prefaced it with the idea that I wouldn't know. Because consistency has never been a struggle of mine. If I had the why, the how would always figure itself out. And finally, it's an interesting question I've been broaching, the ethics of sales. That what justifies a sale? Where I'm coming from is it the actual value you personally know that the client or the person or the prospect will receive? Or is it the perception of value that the client or prospect thinks he or she will receive or has already received? So do you think the ethics of sales comes from the providing or from the receiving? The reason I ask this is there are many times where I know the client or the prospect might not see this as a big value add, but I personally know it is a huge value add because I have context that the prospect himself or herself doesn't have. For example, the other day, someone reached out for a one-on-one call with me, and I gave him ideas where just based on the one-on-one call, right, it wouldn't be a 6-star or a 10-star call because he wanted frameworks to chart out his creator journey online. I gave him a fundamental understanding of what the creator economy is, which might crystallize for him maybe a year later. He'll look back on the conversation and think, okay, that was fucking valuable, but now it might not hit. So the short term and long term of this also, what do you think it is? Where do you think the sweet?
I think in sales, like you're really like a therapist or a psychologist, and you help. I think a lot of what you do, if you're pretty good, is like you help people change their belief systems and their thought patterns. Because usually, if somebody like sets up a sales call, they have a problem. They're suffering in some type of way, or else they wouldn't have wanted to talk with you. Either it's like a knowledge gap or a skill gap or something. Like they're seeking transformation. They set up a sales call in some way, shape, or at least there's a little seed of that in them. And, clearly one of their needs isn't being met in that moment. So as a salesperson, like you're just trying to figure out the truth. Like you're not going to close every deal. Like nobody, even if you're the best salesperson in the world, like you might sell, depending on the offer, you might close like 40% of the deals, maybe 50%, depending on the industry or the offer. 50% would be unbelievable, but like typically 40% is like absolutely incredible conversion rate. So you're not you're not going to sell every person that you work with, but I go into every call just trying to help the human in front of me and like genuinely trying to figure out what it is that they want out of life. And sometimes, the solution that I have is going to help serve them, but I don't know. Like, you don't know unless you go into it with like this really open-minded, feminine, like curiosity. And then you help them, you help pull back layers of beliefs that they have. It's because like ultimately, I think we all fear change. Like every human on earth, I think change is like the scariest thing. And if you're selling a product that's like expensive, and you genuinely believe it's going to be important for that person, then it's your duty to ask them questions and to help them, pull back layers, and get closer to their own truth. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes beautiful sense. I think it's very beautiful. The comparison with psychology as well. Just a follow-up question based on this. Should you close a deal? Sometimes, this is where the material spiritual conflict can sort of happen, right? There might be times where you can close a deal, but the question is, should you close the deal? Maybe it doesn't serve the person well, but you have him convinced. You have the skills to convince him, peel back the layer. What do you think? What has your experience been with this? The times where there was a conflict between needing to close the deal versus whether it was the right thing to do, whether you should just let the...
Well, I think there's a situation where like, it's not going to be a good fit for that person, then, maybe you shouldn't do it. If you feel like you're manipulating them and maybe yeah, I think there's situations where you probably shouldn't close a deal. Yeah. But I do think, it's so situational, man. It really depends. Somebody's like, I don't know, intellectually compromised or in just a horrible emotional place, where they shouldn't be making like a big decision. Like, maybe it's not good to close the deal. I think there's situations where, it doesn't make sense to close them, where it might benefit you and not benefit them. So yeah, I do think there's situations where people are like almost morally compromised and it would be bad to close a deal. But I do think a lot of the time, like when somebody puts a lot of money down on something, I think money is just a powerful form of energy. It's almost like a condensed form of energy and like time locked up into this like abstract symbol that we have. So like when you invest that like energy into something, I think the universe, it always gives it gives it back to you. And usually like by like an order of magnitude higher than the energy you put into it. So I think there's a lot going on. It's really complex. But I think sales is a beautiful thing that gets a terrible rep and a terrible rap. I think it's an incredible form of growth. When you're in the sales trenches, like it's the trenches, so to speak, where you're just getting rejected day after day after day and like hearing no, no, no. You're working long hours. Like it teaches you so much resilience. It teaches you psychology. It teaches you persuasion. It teaches you how to communicate. It's, I think, one of the most valuable skills that a human can like possibly learn on earth.
No, I would agree. It's just talking to you for just this last few minutes about the sales part was really, really illuminating. Because I'm someone who is really good at building. I can build really, really well. I can zone in but I do have a fear of selling, mainly ethical fears, doubts, the whole dilemma. And I think someone like me and anyone else who's watching who is good at building struggles with sales, for someone who's trying to break into sales, let's say myself or anyone else who does have a bit of a reputation online, that who's had a good social proof, what would be the path for someone and for someone who doesn't have anything at all in both cases?
Simple answer is just to sell anything. You have to learn it. It's a muscle. It's like if you want to grow muscle, you got to go to the gym and put your muscles under stress. Like the only thing is like you could possibly do is sell. That's what I would say. Find an offer, find a product, or create your own thing and get it out there. I would challenge anybody that thinks sales are bad. Like if you've built an offer and put your genuine intention and like love and hard work into that thing and you feel guilty about selling it, then like you really just got to like ask yourself, like, is this thing helping people? And if it's helping people, then again, it's a moral imperative to get it to as many people as you can reasonably get it to. Yeah. Like I think people have a little sales trauma. I think we all do. Yeah. Like we've all been traumatized by some sleazy salesperson, at some point in our life, but ultimately like, yeah, you got to just get out and do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Beautiful conversation, Tommy. You had a long day, seemingly yourself, and it just flowed beautifully. For those of us watching, there was no script, no planning. It just flowed from the first question. as it did. So, finally, if there's one piece of advice you would like to give to the folks watching this, just integrating everything that is you for your own self, that if you were to die this moment and there was just one piece of advice that you had to give before you were passed on, what would that be? One truth you want to share? Something so fundamental that it encapsulates everything of your human experience so far.
I would say love everyone and don't take yourself too seriously.
They're both incredible pieces of advice for me more than anyone else. So thank you so much for that. And it was an honor to have you here, Tommy. Just go down to the whole truth experience that has had. It's just a gift that keeps giving. Looking forward to talking more with you. And yeah, if anyone wants to find Tommy's socials, his work, his Twitter profile, they'll be linked down. So yeah, we'll be seeing you. Hope you guys had a good viewing experience. To anyone who stuck on this far, please DM me. You're not a normal individual. Let's connect. Uh, but yeah, thank you so much to anyone who even hopped here or anything. There'll probably be timestamps by the time this goes live. Thank you. Take care. Have a good day. Godspeed. Much love, everyone. And yeah, see you.
Much love.